Hello, everyone. I'm Gil Freed.
And I'm Matthew Castell.
And if you notice, we have in our little boxes here one of my dear friends and someone who really I learned a lot from. And I think of him as a phenomenal mentor and a phenomenal leader in our space, Larry Perkins, who it has been in the industry, let's say 4 or 5 years. We'll try to minimize that, but he is not just someone who has been through the ringer. He has given back in a phenomenal way. He has been involved with the International Association of Venue Managers and was president for a bit and had his 1 year term and had left the organization in a phenomenal shape for the next president. And he still stays involved, even though he claims to be quote unquote retired. I don't think he, like anyone else in our space, no one ever retires. So we just love this too much. So, Larry, why don't you give a little bit about your background?
Thanks, Gil. I appreciate the very, very warm introduction. And it kind of reminds me, you remember the movie, The Space Cowboys? Clint Eastwood, and Sutherland and all those guys, Garner. Well, this is what this reminds me of, is you're going back and bringing up the old geezers to go to the space in a new age and everything. But seriously, I am more than thrilled and delighted to be on with you all today and to talk about a passion of mine, as you mentioned. Been in the business for about 46 years now, and quite a long time, and it's been a passion of mine, and I do stay involved. Although I am retired, but it's something about just keeping your fingers in it, just that adrenaline that you get when you're in this business. We were just talking before we come online about Jim Minish and that sort of thing, and everything of that nature. It's something about this business. He wanted, his father wanted him to be a lawyer, but he wanted to be in this business. And it's nothing like being in the sports and entertainment business. I can remember when I was a director going up to vice president. And with that role, they kind of took me out of the field a little bit, and you felt lost doing that. But let me just kind of give you, if I can, just a quick overview about my background and my career. I don't want to take too much of time, but I want to kind of just bring it to context in a little bit. As you know, I was actually born right here in Enfield, North Carolina, where I'm here on the Zoom call today with you all. A sharecropper's son, worked in the fields, and just a poor boy. We didn't have running water, all of that stuff. We had one light bulb in the house and everything else. And to have spent my career doing something that I had no idea that I would be involved with is just something else. And I ended up going to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And in fact, I spoke to a good friend of mine 2 days ago, Eddie Silverman. He and I studied together at John Jay, and we were talking about the good old days. And he went on to have a company called SOS, and he just sold it for over $1 billion and that sort of thing. And but my career started at John Jay, and I was a PI. I did undercover work there in the field in New Jersey and New York for a period of time. And then I was lucky because I saw this one gentleman who was an old retired guy, Navy, Army guy, and he saw me in headquarters one day after I'd come out of the field to do something. And he said, "How would you like to come work for me?" Same organization, obviously, but different location. So I came out and he said, "Now you're going to have to study security, crowd control, management. You're going to have to go back and do study blueprints and design systems." At that time, it's called hardening and various things of that nature. He said, "But in order to become an official with the company, you got to turn 25. I was like 23 at that time. So for the next year and a half, I rode with him every single day, going on various installations, studying. And he'd give me a pile of books just to read and everything else. But being an Army guy, I can remember one day he would always beat me to these installations. And I said, okay, I'm going to beat him to this installation at this point. So up in Mahwah, New Jersey, was the home of Mercedes-Benz, headquarters of North Carolina, and the headquarters of it was Mercedes-Benz North America at that time. And he said, and I said, I'm going to beat him. So I get up there like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to look at this installation, study it. And I saw him come around the building. He said, good morning. I said, oh my God. So then I said, well, you did all the work and stuff. How about going for breakfast? And he said, no, thanks. I've already eaten. So, so it is those kinds of people that makes you who you are. And those lessons were lessons that I've learned, that I've lived by and given back, as you mentioned earlier. And I learned to give back because of him. Retired guy, he did not have to take me under his wings, but he did. He saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And he nurtured it, cultured it, gave me the tools to succeed. And then when the opportunity for the Meadowlands came up in 1976, they put me down to head up their safety and security program. I was the assistant manager that brought another guy over from racing because we had the racetrack. My headquarters was in racetrack. It had not opened. As you can recall, the Meadowlands is called the Meadowlands for a reason. It was actually built on pylons. They drove pylons out the pylons because it's a swamp, a floating swamp, and they had to actually put barges of sand from the Hudson River over to infill it and those sort of things. But in 76, I had to go down and start from scratch, developing policies, designing security systems, designing uniforms, purchasing all the weapons because we had pari-mutuel wagering at that time, if you recall, back then, and all the guards have to be armed and certified and everything. And of course, we had telephones, pay telephones in the building, which had to be locked down at a certain time. So all of these type of things that you have to do. And keep in mind, there was no unions for sports management and entertainment venues in New Jersey at that time. So which means the unions came over and we had to negotiate with the pari-mutuel wagers, the guards, all the trades, and ended up with 29 different unions at the Meadowlands, and all started with there. Atlantic City, New Jersey, gambling had not been established at that point, so we became the gambling capital of New Jersey, and everything had to be developed from scratch, and thankfully I was a part of that. So I stayed at the Meadowlands Sports Complex from 76 to 2000. And after leaving there as vice president, I was recruited to come here to the Carolina Hurricanes in North Carolina to head their program as the assistant GM, where I spent the next 22 years serving as the vice president at the Carolina Hurricanes PNC Arena. So just kind of a little background of how I got here.
And we always have these wonderful journeys, and it is who and how we make ourselves. But as you said, when you have a mentor, and for every student out there that's listening, find yourself a mentor, ask your professors if they could connect you or if they could be your mentor as well, because they might have a bunch of knowledge and experience that could be useful and beneficial. But getting that mentor or multiple mentors is so critical, because you can learn so much by watching a TikTok video, but spending a day in someone's shoes where you get to see what they do day in, day out is a phenomenal experience. Just phenomenal. So with that, let's start going into a couple news stories that are really relevant right now in August of 2025. Yesterday, unfortunately, there was another shooting, and this one was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, unfortunately, and a couple kids were unfortunately killed and a number were wounded. And it brings up the topic that we unfortunately have to deal with larger venues like stadiums and arenas. is how do we protect them? And you just mentioned, Larry, the concept of hardening venues. What are some of the thoughts that you have on that topic now, especially when we're going to have the World Cup, we're going to have Olympics, we have such major events that are coming to America besides the traditional World Series and Super Bowl and national championship and March Madness and everything else. What could the students that are listening to this or industry professionals that are listening to this, what should they take away? What can we do?
Well, Gil, I mean, it's such an important topic to talk about for sure. Seeing our young kids murdered seems like with more frequency than we've ever had in the past in our lifetimes. And here, especially in the United States, it is becoming just commonplace, everyday occurrences. And it doesn't seem that we're doing enough to prevent it. So all of these things are just heartbreaking. And I can, you go back to looking at Las Vegas shooting, where all the massacre took place. There were just tons of people shot at the concert that was there in Las Vegas. And one of the things that we learned was about elevation. We had talked about elevation and various things of that nature. So it was no longer just the four walls of the facility, no longer just the protecting the perimeter, but you got to look at what's below, what's beside, and what's above you that's going on. And the one thing about these school shootings, first of all, there's never two emergencies, there's never two shootings that are exactly alike. And you go back to the Who concert in 1979, all those things when the term crowd management was first invented versus crowd control and all those kinds of things. There's never been an exact replica of that incident, although we've had tons and tons and tons of people killed in crowd crushes and that sort of thing. But looking at school shootings, all the plans that we do, everything that we do, there's going to be something different. But there's one common thread that we see in school shootings, and that is most of them happens in the morning. The most 90% of the school shootings happen in the morning. Therefore, talking about looking at how do we respond and looking at when incidents happen, studying the analysis of when and where and how these things happen are very, very important. Therefore, you got to do a thorough analysis, like risk management plan. The risk management plan takes every single conceivable thought and exercise in consideration. So one of the things that we have to look at is all those things. And one of the things that I think police can do to help looking at school administrators and everything else is how ballistics travel and that sort of thing. For instance, we know that the ballistics, when shot, does not go and stand against the wall. It actually, if you're shooting against a wall, the air keeps that ballistic bullet from touching the wall. So it bounces off because of the cushion of the air and various things. So looking at those type of things are very important. One of the other pieces of new technology that's coming out, which might have some very good implications, is that body cams now are beginning to be able to not only record, but they're beginning able to understand different speech, different dialects, different speeches, different languages. It obviously depends on where you are, but a camera recorder can now pick up Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, all these various things. And soon it'll be able to look at facial recognitions. It'll be able to do various things, and you'll be able to track different things, which would be an excellent tool. It's not developed yet, but it'd be an excellent tool for teachers and various people that are wearing within the school system, as well as coming into the building. There are other things that you talked about hardening that we could do. Geofencing is one of those type of things. Who's coming in, from what part of the perimeter, and those sort of things. So geofencing is one. Obviously, cell phone apps is another. Obviously, one of the biggest things that people can do, and it just never fails me about how somebody doesn't know about the shooter. Whether it is another student, whether it's a parent, somebody has to see the signs of this troubled person. And we got to do more to make sure that there are avenues in place that can report behaviors like that. Now, obviously, sometimes the police hands are tied because of different laws and different things, and there have been previous commitments or anything else. But if there's a track record, then there should be some kind of methodology that we can say, what is the spectrum? What is the chances of this person going over the red line? And that could be a bucket of able keeping eyes on potential shooters. So just wrap that piece up. There are things, hardening that you can do that we talked about, windows, how to break away, door systems that now that classrooms can put behind the door, escape routes, and those sort of things, alarms, various things of that nature. Certainly having an elevated security system as well. And then, of course, looking at how do you manage the apparatus, meaning the fire, the police, the emergency people that are coming, marshaling areas, where's those marshaling areas, making sure you practice all of those type of things. And of course, we know that hospitals get overwhelmed with these type of things. And what is those systems? Making sure that everything is in place.
There's a lot to unpack there, and that's why this is such a dynamic and interesting approach. Because you mentioned, for example, morning shootings at schools versus venues. Most of the events that we have are going to be nighttime activities or weekend activities, so it's going to have a different dynamic and different feel. But then that's a separation between an in-event type of incident versus oftentimes what we see is workplace violence issues, and that might be closer to the morning time. So you have to be on guard and vigilant constantly, not just event days, but other days as well. Matt, any thoughts that you want to share?
Well, certainly, to my experience, 9/11 sort of changed everything in the stadium and sports field as far as security, not just in the sports world, but everywhere. And it seems to me that they're always going to be a target, but the larger stadiums and arenas have the assets, and they seem to have a pretty good track record. But like what we saw with yesterday's incident, sometimes the smaller venues are more at risk. So, Larry, I guess what would you recommend for a smaller sports arena or venue that doesn't have a large budget? How would you suggest the best use there? What are the basic tools for security that they should be following to give them the best possible outcome?
The first thing is, and that's a great question, it is, and I talk about this all the time when I'm teaching at venue management school, because you're right, because they think they're small, they're immune to various things, but they're just as immune, in fact, in some cases, even more so, because they're small venues. But here's the quick takeaway for that. And that is, when we're teaching about training crowd managers, which is a 3-day workshop that we developed back in 1999, one of the things that we said to them is that you have to know everything about what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And then, because the manual itself is a smorgasbord of absolutely everything. In other words, when you get the 8-pound manual back then, it had every single common denomination. But it's almost like going into a grocery store. You may not need everything that's in that store, but you have to know everything that's in that store. So then you have to do, again, going back to a risk analysis and saying, all right, here are the things, these 100 or 120 things that could possibly happen. Does this apply to us? Yes or no? Go down each list, yes or no. And then you develop a comprehensive plan based on your organization. In other words, take an aircraft, for instance. Do you think that the pilot of a small aircraft doesn't need to know what the pilot of a big aircraft is doing? They do. They have to know what the weather is. They have to know what ETA is. They have to know what the flight path is. They have to know absolutely everything that the big pilots do, even though they may not be flying the same size aircraft or the same route of aircraft. So my point is, every venue manager, regardless of what size venue is, have to understand the whole pie, the whole pizza pie, all 8 slices of the pie, and put in what applies to them and put in what doesn't apply to them. For instance, if a small venue doesn't have a hardening of a perimeter barrier, then what do they do? Do they say, oh, we don't have a barrier, we can't do anything? Yes, you can. You can put in environmental protections. There are various things that you can do. You can park rather than 100 feet, you can maybe park 50 feet. There are things that you can do to harden your venue, even though you may not have all the resources. There are various other things that you can do. For instance, looking at trash cans or looking at sound system or various other things that are on the perimeter that you can put in place to substitute. You can also, don't be afraid to expand your perimeter. What I mean by that, some venues have an interlocking door, an interlocking wall, which means that you have airlocks, an outside door and an inside door that may be 25 feet that are airlocked. Some buildings may not have that. So what you can do then is extend your perimeter with barricades, create clear zones outside of that, or various other things. So there's a myriad of things that small venues can do to substitute for what they don't have from a financial standpoint to put in place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And the concept is often referred to as crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, looking at everything around you. And then when you have, as you use the analogy of a supermarket, you can use what's called a layering approach. You don't have to use everything, but the more that you can put in place that are strategies, it puts a hurdle in the path of somebody else. And it's impossible to get every single thing because those who want to have harm or cause harm have so much more at their disposal because they have the element of surprise. You don't know when they're going to do it, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, or anything else. And I remember when I did some training with Larry back with AVSS. This is like in 2004. So we're going back old school. And some of the different techniques that we were talking about back then, like using a model airplane to deliver anthrax. And who would have thought back then that now we have drones and things like that? And, but we're just trying to be creative as we were playing the different roles and tabletop exercises of possible terrorists and what they could possibly do. And so it requires us to be constantly vigilant and to monitor our surroundings, monitor chatter, monitor social media. And that's often a team effort. It's not just you as the venue. You have so many other resources available, whether it's local, national, international, like Interpol, of individuals that are there to help you out. So don't feel like I'm in this all by myself. There's a lot of other people, and some of the best ones are your colleagues in different organizations like the Stadium Managers Association or the International Association of Venue Managers. We all have the same goal of safety, and we're all in the same boat trying to protect the people that come to our facility, regardless of the size, regardless of what event is going on there.
And Gil, I really want to thank you for your help in developing the curriculum for AVSS way back, and like you say, 2004 when we finally launched it. But your insights and your leadership in developing the curriculum really set a new standard, a new paradigm. It brought us, to me, in the 21st century, which we had not been before. We had obviously crowd management training, conferences and that sort of thing, but we didn't have an in-depth crowd management, safety and security academy like that one is. And, and speaking of that, Frank Poe and I, when we were been charged by President Lionel Dubé to creating that task force. And then Frank and I looked at it and said, we got to do more than what's the outcome of this? So him and I sat, and actually we were in Reno, Nevada on paper napkins, scribbling out what the future of IAVM looked like from a safety standpoint. We shifted the whole governance model, bringing in life safety and everything. And then eventually we said we needed an academy, need something to do that. And one of the good things, as you know, Gil, because you were part of this, is that we patterned it after Quantico, the FBI Academy in Quantico. We not only from a curriculum standpoint, but a seclusion standpoint. We wanted them to be not necessarily in the jungle, but the clear to isolation as we possibly can get them. We wanted them locked in so they could focus on the task at hand. And that's exactly what we did. And you're talking about how that all played out with the various scenarios. As you recall, we created the aggressors and the defenders. So we put you into these marked reels, which lasted more than a day, developing attack plans, and then who's going to defend those attack plans and everything else. And one of the things that I can remember very distinctly on that very first conference that we had, one of the very first academy, is that one of the students was a former Navy SEAL taking the class. And what he did when they were going to blow up the place, and we chose the Meadowlands, and he still had all of his licenses, all of his access codes, and he found that this continental pipeline ran directly underneath the Meadowlands, which I had no idea. So what he said is that we're going 2 miles away in the Hudson River, they're going to invade that, set it on fire, and let it just blow up the entire Meadowland. Those are the kinds of things of deep thinking that would-be people to cause you harm will go through. We in this profession have to think like them, because the old saying is true. They can fail 1,000,000 times, but it only takes one to get through. So we have to keep that in mind.
I remember the expression on your face in that room when the person said, oh, okay, so we're going to go through this like drainage tunnel and go in and pop up in the middle of the parking lot of Meadowlands. You're like, no, there's nothing like that. Then they showed it to you and like, holy, you know, but it's incredible the process. And that's, I think, the critical part to understand is safety, regardless of what we're looking at, is a process, whether we're looking at Matt and what he has to do with Camden Yards to a small little venue. You have to go through a process, and it's understanding what assets you have, understanding your facility, understanding your people, understanding your broader community. And that all comes into play in terms of how you can defend yourself. Now, that raises an interesting issue of what has been in the news over the last couple of days, where a couple university campuses have actually been shut down basically by threats of violence that were phoned in. So it's like swatting and things like that. That's a new phenomena that we have to be on the lookout for. Any thoughts about that? Because here it takes resources. Here it can distract you from your ultimate mission of putting on a great event when you're now having to deal with, let's put it bluntly, idiots who want to possibly cause disruption, but you don't know if they want to cause disruption or if they want to kill people. So any thoughts on that from a perspective of a facility manager?
Yeah, and that's an important subject, and we have to take it into various contexts. Is it a school system where they have certain mandatory requirements that when they get a threat they have to evacuate, or different protocols? Whether it's a university or whether it's a private venue or governmental quasi public property. So each has its own. What you have to understand is, what are the laws and rules and regulations that are governing the operations of that venue? That's one thing. Because then what happens is that you set different parameters based on those type of things. Give you an idea. At a private venue, for instance, let's say take PNC Arena, various emergencies that come up, various threats that come up, various things of that nature. Weather emergency, for instance. If the governor declares a state of emergency, then does it mean that you have to cancel your event, right? In a lot of cases, the answer to that is no, because you'll see in the past that if the teams are in town, both teams, then they'll still go on with the game, right? Unless there's something, other catastrophic things happen. The same thing with a bomb threat that's called in a private venue. If the bomb threat's called in, obviously the protocols is to get police involved, fire involved, your staff involved, and go through your protocol, searching the building, looking for lost items or whatever it might be, preparing different quadrants. But does the police have the authority to say you must evacuate? And the answer to that is no, right? Because the venue manager is still in charge. Now, if the venue manager refuses to take their recommendations, that might be a different thing that you have to consider. But it is still up to the venue manager from a private perspective to decide whether or not they're going to evacuate and whether or not they're going to do various other things. Now, if it fan out to be true, then various things. Now, we know that, speaking of hoaxes, that 99.9% of the calls that come into venues are indeed, in fact, hoax. Of course, that was years ago. I'm retired now. Things are increasingly becoming more real than they did in the past. So we have to put a different spin on it in terms of urgency. Is it real? We have to do more due diligence today than we had before to understanding, are these calls that are coming in hoaxes, or do they seem more plausible? So those are the type of things that obviously obviously what happens there is that you mentioned before, there's so many resources, there's so many tools that are available for people to learn. And the one thing that I'm finding is, and here's the thing about this, Gil, is a lot of veterans like me have retired specifically after COVID, right? People got out of the business and they said, I'm going to take my opportunity to retire. And what's happening is that we have a lot of new young freshman people coming in, which is a good thing, but they do not have the institutional knowledge that we have in being old buddies, going back, because it just takes a long time. It takes a lot of learning to understand these simple nuances that affect our venues, affect our guests, affect our safety, affect our operations. It takes a long time to understand those nuances. In IAVM in Portland, Oregon last year, I was on a panel and speaking to the 30 and 30 under 30 group. And we was talking about 9/11 and various things. I said, keep in mind, I was called to head a task force for 9/11, and this obviously 2001. I've been with the Meadowlands since 1976. I've been involved with IAVM since 1980s, late 70s and early 80s. All of those years of doing crowd management, writing books, various other things, and speaking prepared me for that day of September 12, 2001, when I finally got the call. So what I'm saying is that the foundation of the institutional knowledge doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time to get it. Every nuances that you can do it. And here's the last piece I'll make on this. There was an industry guru, you know him well, Ray Ward, the late famous Ray Ward. Now, Ray Ward was the godfather in sports management. We all loved him. He was a mentor of mine. But even though he had retired, and you talked about giving back, He would still go to IAVN conferences. He'd attend every session. He'd be the first one in class and the last one to leave. Now, here's the guy that has more knowledge than anybody, more books than anybody, but he was that guy sitting in every single class, taking in every single nugget, because there's one piece of nugget, even though you think you know it all, that will come out of that particular class that you've never heard before. And that was the kind of thing that Ray Ward did. And that's the kind of thing in example that I want to leave with the young folks that are watching this. Don't be afraid to be the first one in, the last one to leave. Don't be afraid to learn every single thing you can. Don't be afraid to ask the speakers follow-up questions and various things, because you'll find one thing that you'll put in that toolbox that will help you later on down the line.
Most definitely, that's a phenomenal answer. It's come to that point of the show where we have to have our question. Matt, do you want to ask the question?
Sure, I'd be happy to ask the question, Miguel. Larry, first off, I was struck on your last answer. We were speaking to a 30 under 30 crowd about 9/11, and you realized that probably most of the people in that group that you were speaking to weren't even old enough to even remember 9/11. And that, to me, and I'm sure Miguel and you, that's just hard to imagine, but that's the next generation of stadium managers and venue managers. With that in mind, looking at the future, what do you see as the future of security in venues and arenas and sports facilities?
Now, great question. And I like to say, so goes society, so goes sports management. So as things change in our society, things change in how we manage and operate our venues. So, for instance, back in the 80s, when smoking was banned and having more than 2 drinks of alcohol, stage presence, and so goes society, and smoking and everything else like that, and drinking, so goes how we operate our venue. In today's age and time, obviously we got social media issues that we have to worry about. And one of the biggest things that I see is AI. How are we using AI? And I think that AI is going to play a very, very important role in how we manage sports stadiums in the future. Because and one thing that you always have to keep in mind is that sports venues were built before AI, like they were built before walk-through magnetometers, before various other things. So the new stadiums will have all these tools incorporated, but old stadiums would have to be retrofit. And AI is going to play an important role. For instance, Gil knows this. I was involved with a wrongful death case, a very famous case in Houston, Texas, not too long ago, where 8 people or 10 people suffered death in that case. And I see that AI can play a critical role in how we manage crowd density, how we look at compressions, hotspots, and various things that will be able to look at AI and how we integrate heat-seeking devices, measuring hotspot, crowd density, and various other things. Facial recognition, counts that are coming in. All of these things will play an important role of how we treat and manage sports venues in the world in the future, including looking at maintenance and everything else. We'll have automated systems that will be able to look at demographics, tell us who's coming to the venues. Now we have to depend on where we're selling tickets and taking that data back and saying they're coming from this part of the world, they're coming from this part of the county. We have so many young people, we have so many old people, we have this kind of demographic. AI tools will be able to glean that information, integrate it with obviously like ticket systems like Ticketmaster and various other things. And then, of course, putting in the camera system that have heat shields and various other things that will measure the heat waves and different things. So I believe that going forward, we'll create AI agents within our systems that will be able to do a lot of work for us, give us more warnings than we've ever had to be able to pinpoint with accuracy where these hotspots, crowd density, crowd crushing areas are taking place. So I see that as one of those big pieces that's coming up. And with that added on, venues will have their own apps that fans could be able to download and be able to also keep up with their own safety and different things with that. So it'll be a complete integration.
Gil, what is your thoughts on the future of stadiums and security in stadiums and arenas?
I agree with Larry that AI is going to play a huge role. I was just doing some research last night and looking at what's going on in Europe right now, and they're using AI as well as in conjunction with their cameras and microphones to pick up speech within stadium and be able to pinpoint exactly who's making anti-Semitic slurs, who's making racial slurs, things like that, that they can pinpoint an individual using AI to be able to identify where they have to send security to escort someone out and then to ban them using facial recognition software and stuff like that from ever coming back to the venue. That's where it's going to go. It might seem futuristic and maybe like Minority Report, Tom Cruise. We start off with a movie reference. We're going to end maybe with a movie reference as well, and trying to prevent potential issues. But it's a tool. And like anything else, we need as many tools in our toolkit as possible. And if this provides a value added that we can analyze things more efficiently, more effectively, just there's so much social media chatter before a major event, it's impossible to review it. If you're taking a look at a large venue with 200, 300 closed circuit CCTV monitors out there that are the cameras and then all the different screens, you can't physically do that, even if you're in a control room with 10, 15 people. But if AI is doing it, all of a sudden now you have an extra set of 40, 50, 60 eyes that you don't have to pay a lot of money for because you have it built into your system, and they can more effectively identify concerns and hopefully let you know when there's the potential for something before it escalates. So if it's seeing crowd dynamics and crowd speech and movement patterns and things like that, it can let you know ahead of time and give you a warning. And so I think that's just a phenomenal use of technology, and we're going to see more and more of that coming out.
May I just do one follow-up question, Mark? Sure. Listen, and one of the things that you'll note too about future of venues and where we're going, think about how venues are expanding these days. I remember when the old Philadelphia stadium, I think they had like 80,000 or 90,000 people that used to sit. And then the new stadium had like 70,000, smaller size. But the new venue required more security personnel. Why? Because more of the new venues now are not just looking at seats, but they're looking at social spaces, freestanding spaces, all these things, overlooking the floor, overlooking the game. So it requires not only more stationary posts, meaning stagnant posts, but now they require more roving and more eyes in various places. So the staffing levels for new venues will go up while the seating capacity may go down. And that's only because of the additional entertainment spaces, the new private spaces, and all the other things that stadiums are now becoming to. It is almost like the old airports. You used to go in and just take your plane and you go. But now they're becoming shopping malls, food courts, and everything else. Our new systems and our new stadiums are becoming the same type, not just coming in and enjoying the sport or activity, but they're making it a destination location. And that's the difference. They're making it a city within a city. And that's where we're going with social media and various other things, but certainly that casual and leisure entertainment destinations is what's happening with our new venues.
And I'll take it even a step further. You're absolutely right on that. The other thing that's happening is all these new sports venues are creating neighborhoods around their venues, like the Battery in Atlanta. So now you're not just securing a stadium or arena. Now you have mixed use restaurants, condos, a whole little neighborhood you have to be responsible for also.
Yeah.
It keeps us awake at night, unfortunately, worrying about all these different issues. We wish the world was a perfect place and we wouldn't have to worry about these things, but it's a reality of the environment and times that we live in. And so we thank everyone for listening. We thank Larry for being on the show. Do you want to give a shout out to your company? And that way we can have, and it's not a cheap plug. This is a plug for something that's very valuable.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here, Gil. I really thoroughly enjoyed it being with you all today. I love this, as I said at the opening, and it's all about, for me, it's all the way about giving back now. Somebody gave to me, and as you mentioned, being the president of IAVM and doing all these things, but it was the love and the gift that they gave to me that I'm trying to give back. And of course, I, do expert witness work and facility management work and that sort of thing over that I retired. And my company, Perkins Crowd Management LLC, is basically how people can get in touch with me. lperkins@crowds, CROWSLLC.com is my email address. So look forward to being able to help anybody I can. Staying busy with various things, but look forward to being with everybody. And students, please take what this course has to offer, because I think it's absolutely great. It's an invaluable. Take advantage of Gil and the team here, because they're bringing you a service that you just can't get and you absolutely need, and pick their brain for sure. Thank you all. I appreciate having me and joining you today. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Larry.
Be well, be safe.